All right, so there are 3 categories pro bettors use to identify the strength of games: top plays, leans, and toss-ups. In this segment, we're going to take a look at the leans, games where stats are conflicting but maybe favor one side. Jared Smith of SportsGrid is here to help us navigate this minefield of info, because if you choose the wrong little bit of info, the wrong data could blow up your weekend. So let's start with that Steelers game, getting 2 points, home dogs to the Browns. Steelers going with the third-string quarterback, and the public has reacted accordingly.
Oh, yeah.
How about the pros, though?
Yeah, actually, we've seen sharp money come in on the Steelers in this game. So the line, the Browns were underdogs to start the week, or even last week on the look-ahead line. And then when things kind of shook out the way they were with Mason Rudolph, you saw this line fly towards Cleveland. I do think there's sharp money on Pittsburgh in this game. I think plus 2.5 is where we saw the sharps kind of, say, okay, this is the line in the sand. It's not going to get to 3. You're not going to get Steelers plus 3 in this game. In fact, I think it's drifted back towards Cleveland a bit. I want to say it's plus 1.5, somewhere in that range. I think it'll be kind of in that category this week, where if either team wins by a field goal, that's going to kind of be the decider. These two teams clearly do not like each other. I mean, we saw that a couple weeks ago.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is that what happened with Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett happened just a couple of weeks ago. It's still fresh in their mind. In a scenario like that, does that make this game even more of a bit of a toss-up?
Yes.
Because you don't know who's going to come out angrier?
Yeah, and I think that's why once it got to the Steelers getting almost a field goal, getting points at home, I think that's when you saw the sharp step in and say, okay, this is where Pittsburgh has the value. I also think Mason Rudolph, probably it's in his best interest not to play in this game. Emotions have a funny way of getting the better of you, and clearly they got the better of Myles Garrett and Mason in that game. It was an ugly scene, and obviously we hope we don't see that happen again. But injuries are certainly something to keep an eye on this game. Juju Smith-Schuster will not play. That's big. James Conner will. So Pittsburgh getting a little bit healthier on offense, and again, they're at home. Cleveland doesn't do well historically against Pittsburgh. We mentioned how the third-string quarterback can kind of shift that a little bit. But what are the odds that Cleveland beats Pittsburgh twice in the same year in 2 weeks?
Okay, you brought up a really good point, because historically the Browns don't do well against the Steelers. Do you throw away the historical stats like the Steelers are 7-1-1 against the Browns in their last 9 games? When you have a third-string quarterback out there, can you really even use some history?
It's tough, and what we've seen of Devlin Hodges has been very positive. He went into L.A. I was going to say San Diego. He went into L.A. and they beat the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. So he's had some success, and obviously he had some success last week when he got the call to fill in for Rudolph. It's really a hard thing to analyze third-string quarterbacks because we don't have a lot on tape. There's not a lot of trends. There's not a lot of numbers on them. We have to kind of go by what the lines are telling us. And in this game, the line is saying if you can get the Steelers at anywhere from plus 2 to plus 3, that's where the value stands. You missed your chance to get the value on the Browns at plus 3 earlier this week, and we've seen the NFL. These lines are so close. We saw it with the Chicago-Detroit game on Thursday. Chicago opened as a 2.5-point favorite.
Right.
Then the whole injury thing happened with Jeff Driscoll. The line went to 6. A good bettor got Chicago minus 2.5, and then Detroit plus 6.
Yeah.
And so that's how
you middle.
That's how a sharp bettor tries to play these NFL games. You fade the line movement. Here, the line movement goes towards Cleveland, so you take the Steelers plus 2.5.
All right, speaking of big lines, the Dolphins, 10-point home dogs to the Eagles. Double-digit home dogs are always tempting to pro bettors. Are the sharps biting on the Dolphins?
No, I think this is the classic get-right spot for Philly. We talked about it before that, Philly's starting to get a little healthy. Alshon Jeffrey's huge. I think they've missed him more than any one of these guys that they've been without this year. But now Zach Ertz is questionable. So it kind of, it just seems like it keeps going back and forth with Philly's injuries. But based on what we saw on Thursday with Dallas, it's got to be alarms going off.
Oh, my gosh, absolutely.
They have a chance to really take a stranglehold on this division with the next 3 weeks. They face the Giants twice. They face the Redskins. They face the Dolphins this week. They can legitimately win out. They face Dallas in, I think, 3 weeks. I think it's the second to last week of the year. The Eagles get Dallas at home, in which will most likely be a de facto NFC East title game.
Yeah, and Wentz has thrown at least 1 touchdown in every game this season, but you bring up a great point. There's blood in the water right now in the NFC East, and you have to think that, look, you're drawing information from a number of different sources when you're trying to decide which side is the sharp angle, and sometimes it's not the analytical side.
100%.
Sometimes it's what you're seeing, out there, or in the, I guess, in the standings, or in the opportunities that are presented for the teams.
And there's times where the pros, the sharps, and the public are on the same side. That is the case here. We've seen this line move with the market. It opened at 7.5. It's gone to 10. I wouldn't be surprised if it got to 10.5. Once it got closer to game time, everybody's on Philly this week, which scares me a little bit in the NFL. But when it's the Dolphins, you can maybe turn a blind eye to all that money coming in. But this does feel like a get-right spot for Philly.
All right, Chiefs, big favorites against their division rivals in the Raiders. 9.5-point spread in this one. In KC, is that the right number, or was the bigger line a reaction to the Raiders' terrible offensive performance against the Jets?
I think I was the only one that bet the Jets last week. I love the Jets.
You saw an opening there.
I did. And, I think Oakland's hitting that point in the year where I think fatigue is setting in. They've gone to London. They have to travel to the East Coast a ton. They had to travel to the East Coast last week. This was the look-ahead spot. That's why I love the Jets last week, because Oakland was worried about this game this week. And I think that loss against the Jets kind of put a little chink in that armor. And we've seen great things with John Gruden this year, clearly. But this, again, comes down to two things. A, Patrick Mahomes getting healthier, the Chiefs' offense getting healthier, and Andy Reid off the bye. How about those numbers? 17-3 off the bye, 10-1 at home.
Man.
And I know it's a big number, but if you don't think Oakland's going to win the game, and clearly we don't, you can't bet the Raiders, so you just got to go Chiefs here.
See, that's when I think that you can bet historical stats.
Yeah.
When they center around the coach.
100%.
Anytime you're talking about a team over a course of about 5 or 6 years, those historical stats seem to lose a little value. When you're talking about what a coach does, that's always important. I always like to look at what happened the last time these two teams met. The last time these two teams met, Pat Mahomes had the 4 touchdown in the second quarter against the Raiders. I think that's. And the other thing was he didn't have Tyreek Hill in that game as well.
That's a huge thing. And we've seen this Chiefs offense kind of adapt to some injury problems this year. And I just love Kansas City. They were kind of shell-shocked in that Titans game. The Titans had that game. That game was over. And all of a sudden, Tennessee came back and won the game. Chiefs have looked good since then. And again, the bye. This late in the year to get a bye is huge, because a Week 10, Week 11, Week 12 bye, these players are dog-tired at this point in the year, and you give them that week off, then you add in the fact that Andy Reid's been so good off the bye, everything's flowing in Kansas City's direction. This week, I'll take the Chiefs.
Could be a good run for KC coming into the final stretch of the season. All right, the Bucs giving 1.5 at home to the Jaguars. This over-under is also at 47.5. Do either of those numbers intrigue the pros?
We actually saw the Jags open as the favorite here, and they just haven't liked what they've seen with Nick Foles and company, and how can you blame him? He has not looked good since coming back from that injury. So the early line movement favors the Bucs. We did see a little money come in on the under, which surprised, because I like the over in this spot. Bucs have just been an over machine this year, and once I got that, usually
you realize that no team has hit the over more than the Bucs this year. They're 9-2 against with the over.
Oh, they're such a fun team to watch. So if you're a fantasy football player, DFS gambler, Jameis Winston's it's just like a catalyst. Like anytime he's on the field, you're either going to get a pick six or a 90-yard bomb, or something's going to happen to kind of spark the team in either direction. It could be against his team, but it could be for his team too. We mentioned that Triple Crown there on the graphic: touchdowns, yards, and picks. No player's ever led the NFL in all 3.
Really? Because it seems like Brett Favre would be really close.
Brett Favre was close. I was looking this up. Favre was close. The thing was, Favre threw a lot of interceptions over time, but he never had 1 year where it was crazy. It was just kind of like a consistent.
He was always 18, 20, something like that.
But Jameis Winston, you're never out of a game, and you're never quite going to be secure in a game if he's your quarterback. I do see some points in this game. I think eventually Nick Foles will figure it out. The Bucs defense has been shaky. You're getting 1.5 of value there as the lines come down from 49 to 47.5. Over seems like a fun play here.
All right, that's a look at his leans. Make sure you check out his top plays and toss-ups, and make sure you keep up with the line movement on sportsline.com. For Jared Smith of SportsGrid, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.